How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another Ask Me Anything. Again, a space for advice, inspiration, mentorship. If you need a sounding board or someone to still your wobbles, let me know if you have any new questions. Feel free to add them to the Google form that I'll share in the YouTube description. Yeah. As always, my advice is an offering. I'm not an expert. Keep what resonates, release what doesn't. And the more I know about your situation, the better. And finally, feel free to invite anyone that may benefit from these kind of talks. Yeah. Okay, so today, I think I'm gonna be have time to get to two. Um, One is about working full time at home and trying to unschool your child at the same time. And then another one that I'm hoping to get to is about like kind of aggressive and violent behavior in the home. So, all right, first one. I'll read the question. How does one unschool while working a full-time job from home? How can I engage my 11-year-old child in learning activities that will also allow me to work? I think almost as always, let's take a deep breath here. This is a lot. This is a lot for someone to be thinking about, considering, um, and considering managing. So yeah, deep breath right here. Many have said this is very possible and it's very doable. Um, I'm not going to say that. I am going to say it's possible. I am going to say it's doable. I don't know if it's possible or doable for you specifically. So that's where it brings me to a bunch of questions. To start off, are you a single caretaker? And I think this is going to help a lot to understand. Like, do you have a partner, but you require your income? Does your income supplement theirs? Um, are there two incomes? I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Um, and there's some considerations about that, which I can talk about later. But I think that's a good starting question. Um, what I'll also say, I know at the start I said I'm not going to promise anything, but I will promise this. You won't truly know the answer to this question unless you try. So now that I'm thinking about it, what are the downsides to trying this? What are the outs if you decide that this doesn't work anymore? Okay, so like maybe the downsides to trying this are, um, it's gonna be a lot more hectic for the amount of time that we try it. It's uncomfortable because it's something new that you're not used to. Um, it requires a lot more communication between yourself and your child. Um, there's a possibility that it kind of interrupts your work. Um, and obviously that could lead to some negative impacts. Um, But I want to say that again. You won't truly know until you try. And I say this having heard a lot of people that go through similar things. And I say this also as someone who has gone through this myself. Um, Now, I didn't jump. When we started unschooling, we were two incomes, one child. And we moved to one income, and me with like an understanding that I would start to pick up my own business a little bit. Um, kind of on a wing and a prayer, just hoping that it work. So I don't think everybody can do that. I don't think everybody, well, I think there is privilege in being able to downshift to that extent and then kind of cross our fingers and hope that it still works out. I think there is privilege in that, but I also think this is a confidence thing for the people. It is doable, but a lot of for us the set of people that it is doable for, I think there are a lot of people that just kind of rule that out for a lot of reasons. And again, I'll talk more about things like downshifting. Um, and hopefully that fits your situation or anybody that's listening. Um, so yeah, I again we with my family we jumped into unschooling, and it's not like I immediately had business. So we did have some money saved up. But we were looking at kind of our expenses. We only had one car. We figured out like where could we cut back, where could we, tighten up. And then I started from that point building out the different businesses that I have. Like I teach drum lessons, we teach Japanese lessons, I did coaching, and then other things developed because I had the time to think about them and I had the time to explore other facets of business, including the coaching. And because of the pandemic, that coaching kind of started because I was already homeschooling and unschooling, and a lot of other parents were like, well, what is this thing? Because currently school is not working. Um, yeah, and then with Pennsylvania, my state, we have evaluations that have to be done for homeschoolers. So that was another thing that I picked up. And again, that's not like a huge chunk of my money, but um, with the time figuring out like the time downshifting gave me a lot more space to consider what else I could be doing. Okay, I know my story is not applicable, but I think the part that rings true is again back to the you won't know until you try. Um, okay, you learn so much along the way as you're doing it. And I said this, what's the worst case scenario if it doesn't work? I think for a lot of places, maybe every place, that school is always an option and you can re-enroll at any point. Let me know if I'm wrong on that, but figure out if that is true for your location. And then, you might be a week in, you might be 3 weeks in and be like, this, I can't take this anymore. Or something switched. It was working, something switched, we have to go back. And then you always have that to fall back on. It's good to be kind of proactive and ready. Um, okay, lots of other questions, like I said. And it's not questions from me to you, it's actually questions from you to you. It's something for you to answer for yourself. How independent, and I'll ask this like I am you, how independent is my young person? How independent can they be with like a little help, a little nudging? What systems can you put in place to help your young person be independent? Um, because if you're thinking about like, your work requires you to be on um, 40 hours a week, 8 hours a day, or 10 hours a day, and you only have like a lunch break in there, that's the only time you can really check in. And if your 11-year-old comes to you with questions, you have to be like, I can't help you right now. And how much would they be okay with that? Is there a system of communication like, hey, if it's an emergency, please come in, or anything that you have, leave me a voicemail or leave me a voice message in a text or write down a note and I will definitely get back to you. Um, yeah, I think I had something else in here. Oh, okay, no. Do they understand the expectations slash your capacity? Uh, and again, like I asked kind of what your capacity is. Um, But having that communication, like setting those expectations are really important. And like the clear boundaries of what you need to do to maintain your job and do what your job well. Um, it's important for your 11-year-old to know that. And I always go back to Domari Wearen, had this really great thing that we use sometimes. We used it a lot in the beginning. But now kind of boundaries are understood a little bit better as I work from home. Is that if your child needs to talk to you, that they put a hand on your shoulder, right? And so I'm typing and my son has his hand on my shoulder and I'm focused on something. I'm not going to immediately stop because that's going to pull me away from my work and then it's going to take time to get back in. But I see him there and I know he's there and I can get to a good stopping point, at least to get the last thoughts off or what I have to do or before I lose track of something. If I know it's going to take a little bit longer, again, Damari said this, like you can always put your hand on their hand to be like, I know you're here, but you got to give me like maybe a minute more. And it's not like your child has to stay there rigidly with their hand the whole time. It could be like a hand on the shoulder, you touch them, and then they kind of wait for a minute, 2 minutes, or whatever you have previously discussed. And maybe they get bored and they walk out of the room, and that sucks. But at least it's not impacting kind of your work. Because minimally, that's what's required out of this. So again, Domari Wearen's hand on shoulder kind of agreement, I think that's a really good starting point. Um, does your job require you to always be on? Does it require specific hours? I did ask this. Okay, here's another one. What are your limits on screen times, video games, connections through Discord or FaceTime, or what else is there? Uh, it's like Facebook Kids or something like that. I think we used a few times. Um, connections through video games like Minecraft and whatnot. And are those things in place? Okay. Not like, okay, we're starting today. Okay, try and connect with your friend because sometimes that figuring that out takes sometimes an hour and sometimes a lot of frustration too. Trust me, with things like Minecraft, I've dealt with like, wait, what system do they, or what Minecraft version do they have? And then how do they get in? And then do they know your username? And then, oh my God, what's going on? Um, and how knowledgeable is your 11-year-old with like video conferencing? Do they have friends that would be open to doing this? Um, Trusted friends and different things like that. Uh, do they have in real life friends, IRL friends, or people that they've met online? Is that okay for you? Um, You can also, if you are looking for this kind of community for your child, you can make a call for it in online communities for connections, like on a Facebook, a local or statewide Facebook. Well, actually, it doesn't even have to be local or statewide. Any sort of a Facebook homeschooling group, like, hey, we're looking for partners for this game to play, at the same time online. Um, and how good is your child with tech? And how much do they want those things? So I think the answer to all of these, like finding those answers, helps steer you in like, okay, like for example, your child does not like games and needs a lot of attention when doing projects. They need a lot of like kind of management and they need someone there. Uh, can they be in the same room with you? And maybe that's like the body doubling that they need, but they're okay being quiet for most of the time. And every once in a while, they're showing you, a picture that they made. And that works for you. Or maybe not. Or maybe your child absolutely wants to be doing video games, but you're not okay with that. And you're only okay with that for 2 hours. And then how do you enforce that like kind of 2 hour rule? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And again, these are the kind of things that you have to figure out as a family, to figure out if you're willing to jump in or not. Okay, what else do I have here? To think about how this can work, you definitely want to consider what the next day's activities are, depending on when your child usually wakes up, or what rhythm they will wind up having in this life, um, which is likely going to change over time. But sometimes, like a morning meeting, like, hey, we woke up at the same time. I know it's 6 a.m. I know you're not necessarily bright-eyed and bushy-tailed right now, but what are your plans for today and how can you accomplish that? And how can I get you ready in the next 20 minutes before I hop on my first call or whatever? Um, or maybe it's the night before, like, hey, let's reflect on what you did for the day. How was it? I know I had a couple frustrations on my side, because you wanted to do this thing and I really couldn't help you at that moment. And I apologize, whatever. But let's talk about how, like, what are we gonna do for tomorrow? Okay, what are your plans for tomorrow? And then for me, I'm gonna see if I foresee any issues coming up, and how can we proactively kind of problem solve them together right now. Um, yeah. Are there any nearby families that can drive your child to meetups? This takes a bit of vulnerability. This takes a good amount of trust. Um, but I've had families that have done this for me, at times when like I've been sick or I've been busy on like all day calls. And I've also had times that I've done this for other families as well, for whatever reason, right? Um, but it's not like we started unschooling slash homeschooling and then found people immediately to do this. Um, yeah. Um, Yeah. And then on top of that, maybe your child goes for a meetup once every week with other friends or someone that's picking them up. And then maybe you can fill in the gaps and kind of reciprocate on the weekends. Like, hey, we're gonna go for a picnic. We're gonna go to a museum or what have you. Does your child want to come along? Um, how mobile can you be for work? So maybe you can drive 20, 30 minutes to a meetup while you're on a call and have your laptop and sit in the car while anything's going on. But again, it goes back to that, like, how independent is your young person? How trusting are you of the people at the meetup and the location, et cetera, et cetera. But maybe it's just walking down the street to the nearest park and sitting there, um, working from your phone or something. Again, depending on a lot of the questions that we've already asked. Is there a self-directed center near you? Sometimes this can be a shot in the dark, but it's a good idea to look into this. Uh, if you think the money is completely not a possibility, like your financial situation would not allow that, you might be surprised because a lot of self-directed education centers have sliding scale tuition. So I recommend looking into anyone nearby you, asking around again in like homeschooling groups, but also ASDE, the Alliance for Self-Directed Education, has a map, and I'll share that. And it's basically you just look on the map to see who's near you. I wonder if you can put in your like zip code. I think it's more of just like, scrolling on the map to where you are. Um, But yeah. Oh, okay. All right. So to the downshifting thing that I think a lot of people can do and don't realize it, because you get stuck in a way of life that includes, I don't know. different things that you might not necessarily need, but you're so used to them that's your comfort zone. You don't recognize how much you can possibly cut back on the things that you're buying. Um, so is there wiggle room? Is downshifting possible? If you want to say no, question that real quick. And you might be right. You might be absolutely right. Like, absolutely, there is no downshifting possible. That's cool. I'm glad you understand yourself. But I think I want to say, like, a lot of people that do say this about themselves, like, no, we couldn't afford to cut back on work hours or something like that. Um, is because they haven't asked the other questions like what things can we cut out of our lives that we might not necessarily need. Um, do you have two cars at home and you only need one? Do you dine out once a week, twice a week? Do you have streaming services that you might not need? Uh, is there a way if you have like if you're in the US and you have like AT&T or T-Mobile or any of the other like popular cell services, can you look into the cheaper ones like Mint or um, what was the other one that we used? I can't remember now. Yeah, we currently have Mint. Cricket was the other one. And because there's much cheaper if you have a big brand name one, at least in the US, this is true. And the service is still great. Like we have no complaints. And that cut off so much money a month. What can you utilize the library for? Are you using for everything it offers? Again, if we're cutting out streaming services, can you just buy like a $30 DVD player and then get DVDs from the library? Or maybe not just your library, but like requesting them from kind of all the interlibrary loan system or what have you, like the local county libraries. Um, DVDs, books, audiobooks, museum passes, events. I know sometimes they have like puzzles and games. They have like sometimes STEM boxes or coding things. There's magazines, even like online. Oh yeah, there's so many things for my library. We love our library. And I'm not necessarily saying everybody's library is like this or has connections to services like this, but we have Hoopla and what's the other one? Hoopla and Canopy, which both both have movies that you can stream online a certain amount a month. Um, and I think Hoopla, they also have like kind of audio, I think it's audiobooks and like ebooks and different things like that. Um, yeah, that is not an exhaustive list of ways you can downshift. And I'm sure if you search the internet, you will find things. And I'm not saying these are all possible for you or that any of these are possible for you. Um, but some of these might inspire you in different ways that you're like, well, actually, I don't need to work full time. My company says they want me full time, but can I drop down 10 hours a week? And is that possible? Because, if you don't ask that question, it won't happen, most likely. A lot of considerations there. Yeah, so I'm interested if anybody is listening or for anybody that's listening, what are ways that you have downshifted or think is possible that you have not used yet, or downshifting that you have used? I would love to hear kind of any comments on that or, email me. Um, yeah, so that's what I have for that one. I would love to hear any more discussion on thoughts on those. Or again, if you were the one that asked that question, you have to, like kind of an update, like, hey, specifically, this doesn't work because of this. Give me a little more detail. Um, all right, I will jump into the next one. I'll read the question here. We have some aggressive and violent behavior which has drastically subsided since being out of school, but still rears its head Yeah. Are there any signposts to managing this in a homeschooling context? Often supports in the UK come through schools which are connected to services like therapists, etc. I want to start off by saying, like, I don't have an answer for this. I really don't. In the US, supports are largely connected through specifically public schools, so likely it's a very similar situation. Again, with more information, I could help more, but I do have our questions, okay? And I think this is where I can help. How much is this behavior affecting the family? How does everyone feel about it? Is it unsafe for family members, including the aggressor? Um, what specifically might be the reason for the drastic subsidence of violence behavior? Are there less demands at home? Is it more individualized at home, more flexible, less sensory overwhelm, etc.? Because I think figuring out a pattern of what fixes it to some extent is also figuring out the patterns of what caused it to a larger extent while being um, in school. I'm guessing like a conventional school. I also think that there might be a lot that's unsaid in this situation so far. So, what are the other complications of this situation? Is the violent behavior because the child is nonverbal? Are they PDA? And I say this because this has been on my mind a lot recently. Is there another neurodivergence or neurodivergences? Is there a disability? Are there other symptoms that are popping up? Um, because it's easy to say, hey, this is a possible fix, but if there is a lot more complications or if there are any more complications, then a lot of those fixes might be ruled out indefinitely. What are the triggers? Okay, so we talked about like maybe what are the triggers in school and then how those have lessened in the home environment. But what you're saying is that it still rears its head. So this aggressive and violent behavior is still happening. What are the triggers at home? What can you tell? And if you can't tell, it just kind of seems like it's happening, then you can try the ABC technique. I know this is behavioral, yes, but we are thinking about a specific behavior. So take this with a grain of salt. I don't believe in quote unquote behaviorism. Um, but we are specifically talking about this aggressive and violent behavior. So the ABC is antecedent, what happened before the behavior. So that's A. Then what was the behavior? And then C, what was the consequence? And I'm not talking about punishment. I'm talking about the logical, natural consequence. So maybe it's like, uh, child wasn't heard. I'm just going to simplify it. If I child wasn't heard and then hit their sibling, and then the consequence was we moved that child out of the room. Um, and there was a lot of screaming or something like that. I'm saying this is good for documentation because over a long enough period, there's a possibility that you can start to see patterns and possible triggers. Um, it's definitely a crutch, this ABC, like it can help, but it's not going to tell you everything. And I think again, if your child is nonverbal, you might not know everything until 3 years from now, or maybe never. Um, and that can be really, really tricky. Especially when there's so many possibilities out there. The lights are too bright. Somebody yelled in another room. Somebody said my name, but then didn't follow up. And now I'm just irked by what's going on. Um, I don't know. Yeah, so many possibilities. Um, is it worth the drastic subsidence of violent behavior? Is it worth having your child, and again, I'm just guessing that this is a child. Um, is it worth having your child at home? Um, so the answer to that, and I know that sounds harsh, but the answer would be found in analyzing kind of these and similar questions with equitability. Like, it was way worse for that child to be in school and for everybody to be going through that, including that child in school, than the child being at home and only once a week having something where it's like a violent behavior. And maybe that answer is like, yeah, like hands down, at home is the way to go. But maybe the answer is like, it is much better that for that child that they're at home, but it is much worse for the family that that child is home. Um, and what does that mean, right? So then maybe another question pops up. Do you have the money for private or at-home support, even part-time, even just someone on hand? Um, because that could help to alleviate, that could be enough to kind of support the family from, I don't know, let's say 12 to 3 every day or 12 to 3 twice a week. Which is again not this huge chunk of time, but that could be enough for the parents to, or the parent, the at-home parent to like get the stuff done that they need to get done and then be back hands-on, after 3 o'clock or something like that. Phew. That was another hard one. But if this is your question and you do have more to add to it, I would love to hear more. Um, I hope that my questions help you kind of think through this. And if you do come up with a decision, either with this question or the parent that was like wondering, hey, full-time job at home, is this going to work with like unschooling? I would love to hear. And I would love to hear for like feedback from anybody that has, I've read and responded to any of their questions. Um, yeah, so I think that's pretty much it for today. Um, Looking at my schedule for next week, I'm gonna take 1 week off. So the 21st, I'll be off, and then I'll get back on schedule the week after that. But thank you so much for listening in. All right, see ya.